Hello and welcome to It's Personal, the podcast which explores how to put the citizen at the heart of public service transformation. I'm Jess, the co-editor-in-chief of Civil Service World.
And I'm Jo, a partner at KPMG focusing on customer transformation.
Today's episode has a slightly different feel to it. We're going to be discussing an immersive event which Jo and the team at KPMG hosted last month, not only to launch their annual Citizen Experience Excellence report, but also to help inspire public sector leaders to think differently about citizen experience. We're going to hear about the event, which, as well as featuring celebrity cameos from government leaders like DWP's Director General for Digital Transformation, Helen Wiley, and Emily Middleton, Director General working on the same kind of thing in DCIT, also had actors bringing the stories of real citizens to life and packing a bit of an emotional punch in the process. So it's fair to say, Jo, that it wasn't like any normal report launch.
Definitely not. So after we've heard about the event and discussed some of the highlights, we'll also hear from some senior civil servants who were there on the night, sharing how the performance made them think and feel about their work.
And sadly, I couldn't be there myself this year, but Jo kindly acted not only as one of the hosts on the night, but also as a roving reporter for this podcast. So we can listen now to some of the pre-event preparations between Jo and a couple of the other guests.
So we're here at the Steel Yard, which is right on the bank of the Thames. It was a merchant trading house from the 13th century onwards. Huge amount of exchanging going on. However, they pretty much did that in isolation of other traders across the UK and Europe. So Queen Elizabeth shut it down. And for me, it was a real lesson in if you want long-lasting exchange and sustainability, you've got to collaborate. And that's what this event is all about tonight. It's about the people in the room collaborating with each other and sharing good practice, sharing stories, also sharing when it doesn't go well. And this is our third proper year of launching the Citizen Experience Excellence Research. We have now 132,000 citizens who have contributed to some insight that shows what matters most to them in public service. So every year we enact that insight through acted immersive performance rather than PowerPoint. So tonight we have a whole range of different activities going on with actors reenacting what they've heard citizens say, but we also have the audience involved in making choices and decisions about what needs to happen in the ecosystem to thrive, to enable them to improve citizen experience. The show is going to be about an hour and a half. We have over 100 people attending and very excited about it. I'm in the green room with two guests, and that is Helen Wiley. Helen, hi.
Hello, Jo. Thanks for having us on.
You're very welcome. And Dean Grandy. Hi, Dean.
Hi, Jo. I'm delighted to be here.
So last year, when we ran the event in a graffiti tunnel under Waterloo Station, the theme of that event was around the services that we're providing. Are they really fit for purpose? When the insight was telling us there were three things that were really important to citizens, and that was the systems weren't being made properly to remember us, remember me. They weren't focused on recognising citizens coming in and out of public service. And although there's a huge degree of empathy in public sector, what wasn't happening because of some of that digital transformation not being embedded effectively, there wasn't enough respect me. And what we've had as a result of that is overwhelming feedback that these three R's are actually so important across public services. And I just wondered what your thoughts were on that.
I didn't think where we were tonight, this industrial venue we're in, would be an upgrade. But based on last year's graffiti tunnel, maybe that's where we find ourselves. So look, I really like the three R's, and I can see they've pulled through into this year's report as well. Part of the conversation I think we're expecting to have is more of an exploration around why are they still common themes? Why do things maybe feel a bit stalled? I think there's some examples of really good practice, but it still doesn't feel like we're getting momentum in enough places. We're improving services at a pace that people expect us to. And so there's a bit of a conversation, I think, expecting to have anyway around, well, what is it that gets in the way? Is it technology? Is it culture? Is it none of those things, all of those things, plus many more. And I know that there's dimensions that have come through in your conversations with citizens as part of the survey itself being filled in, but I'm sure the people in the room tonight will have their own views and thoughts as well.
Exactly, and we're going to bring them in. So this is a very immersive, interactive show tonight. Everybody has a part to play. And this year, what we've actually rally cried for, so our big theme this year is about making the shift. So we're kind of pulling out the fact that citizens' experience in our research is flatlining. It's not improving. So a bit of a sort of rally cry for what is the shift civil servants are going to make to really make this work? Because the intent is there, but some of the delivery is letting you down. Dean, I don't know if that's something you can relate to outside of the UK. What's going on?
Yeah, look, I certainly can. And in fact, during the event, I'll talk to a couple of examples and case studies in ASPAC in Canada and in Australia as well, where again, different levels of maturity, but you spoke about the need to trigger and accelerate and generate momentum around particularly delivering the key insights of remember me, recognise me and respect me, which is premised on the fact that the citizen is central to the design process and that the delivery mechanisms are constantly adapted to recognise the shifting and evolving nature of government service delivery, but expectations of citizens and the demands that society now has of government and how that can be factored into the accelerated delivery of services. And there are some really interesting examples of success. There are examples of failure. And I think it's valuable to draw on both sets of insights to frame investment decisions and prioritisation, but how to set a vision and some directional intensity around the execution against that without being disrupted, without being diverted onto another priority. And that's easy to say, but very difficult to do. But there are some good sound examples to draw on.
And that's exactly what tonight we're going to do. You know, we've sort of boiled that down to specific levers for the shift. And we're actually going to ask our audience to take part in what they believe are the most powerful levers for bringing an ecosystem together.
So, Jo, let's stop there and find out what were some of the key challenges that people brought up. Can you tell us what the actors did and what parts they were playing and where the audience took you in the end?
The key challenge was around flatlining citizen experience excellence data and a hypothesis that are those scores ever going to increase unless we do something about the ecosystem in which public services thrive and exist in. Mm-hmm. So what we did this year was that we maintained the theatrical elements to the research that we launched. We've done this for 3 years now, where we reenact real life citizen data and insight and real life public civil servant opinions and experiences. And we reenact those through personas or characters or actors. Mm-hmm. And every year, our guests are now returning back to us to say, oh, what's going to happen this year?
And so is it the same actors who've been with you, or most of the same actors?
We have 2 actors who are now part of our family, and it's lovely to see them again every year. And particularly for those that return, what we're now hearing is that it's become a bit of a thing that they want to hear what the characters are going to do next. Mm-hmm. So although it's surprising to some, it's kind of people are looking forward to it in a different way as well.
Which characters were the actors playing this time around?
So we had 3 characters. First was a public sector service owner, someone who does a lot of really good work, genuinely committed to public service, seen some results on paper, but at the end of his tether, because it wasn't adding up to the systemic shift that he knew was possible, or it wasn't making a difference on citizen experience and therefore demonstrating quite a bit of frustration. Mm-hmm. The second character was a citizen, a young man who we met first in a waiting room, and he was in a relationship with a lady that was pregnant, and he was going through some tough times trying to find a new job and had lost his way a little bit in the system, and some of the system was inhibiting him from being successful.
Mm. And then I think the third persona, she packed the biggest emotional punch possibly. Was she the one whose daughter had died?
So last year, yeah, absolutely. She was a citizen in the system and her daughter had sadly passed away, and she took over caring for her grandchild, her daughter's son. Mm. This year, she was a woman working for a charity, and essentially pretty much exhausted and having to repeat herself over and over again around her needs and requirements and the fact that her circumstances had changed.
And my job share told me that dotted around the stage, there were all these chairs, a school chair, a wheelchair, an office chair, and deck chairs. And they were arranged in a kind of semicircle. And as the evening went on, the chairs gradually became more and more chaotic. And the characters kept asking each other, what are the chairs about? But we learned over the evening that they represented different viewpoints and different mindsets and the kind of disorder of the system, which to me sounded like a really nice visual metaphor about the way individuals experience things.
It was. And to be honest, I was a bit unsure about how it would go, but it did seem to land quite well. And I think one of the key points was around those chairs exist in our system every single day in different settings in the ecosystem. And sometimes we forget about the person that's sitting in the chair.
How did the audience participation element work?
So for us, this was really important. What we didn't want, because we're now 3 years into this, was monologuing actors on a stage. We were really keen to continue to pull the views of the people that can actually influence the system, and that was our guests. So one of the repeating themes we had was around choosing your own adventure and making decisions. So we kept coming back to posing scenarios that the actors were playing through and going out to the audience to say, well, what would your decision be? What is the best decision that you've made in this situation? And we got them to vote using strictly star paddles to be part of that experience. And I was really pleased because for me, when you get your audience to interact, you want some feedback from them on why they've voted or why they've chosen certain paths. So we were able to get them involved in sharing some of their views and opinions. So it definitely felt two-way.
One of the things that Susanna, my job share, said on the night, she said apparently one of the audience members, in response to the stories portrayed by the actors, felt able to raise concerns that they had experienced with the service, and they became quite emotional in doing so. And then they were able to speak directly to the service owner, who was also in the room. And I think that's a really powerful reminder that public servants are also citizens and that they can speak to each other and share their experiences and also be a voice for citizens in a way that perhaps not every member of the public can. They've got a bit of a head start on giving feedback in a way.
It was definitely one of the profound moments of the evening, and thank you to that person who spoke up. It was incredibly powerful. What I liked about that was that everybody leaned into that and recognised it and definitely respected the fact that they all needed to make better decisions for that not to happen again.
So as we mentioned earlier, we also caught up with some of the attendees on the night to hear their reflections. And now we're going to listen to what they had to say.
I'm Kerry Ross and I'm Head of Communications and Engagement at NHS Devon. So the focus of my team is about to shift into a lot more on patient experience, customer experience and insights. That's going to be a major shift in how we operate as a comms and engagement team. So this has been perfect timing really for me to hear about what the citizen experience is, particularly of healthcare services, so we can start to think about how we use that in our future planning. I love the style of it. I thought using actors to tell real stories was just really impactful and it really brought the stories to life. I have learned that I really need to just get started with some new ideas. We've got a slightly changing team. Now's the time to get started on trying something new and trying a change. And I found the event really inspiring and I've got lots of ideas to take back to my team.
Hi, my name's Mary. I work at the Department for Culture, Media and Sport. One of the things that my job share partner and I work on is grants, and we're working at the moment on how to really help our arm's length bodies take a place-based approach to meeting the needs of citizens in their area. A large part of that is going to be helping them to have visibility of each other's data so they can see any areas of potential duplication, equally see any cold spots and really make sure that every pound is working for the citizen. It was good fun. It was a contrast to the usual kind of post-work networking or CPD event. And I really enjoyed the actors. I really admired the way that they approached their roles. I thought it was a really good example and reminder of how multifaceted the lives are of each of the citizens that we encounter. So maybe me or my department or arm's length bodies, we're encountering 1% of that individual's life when they interact with us and our services. The other 99% is really affecting their experience of not just government, but life generally.
I'm Paul Clements. I'm a Director of Operations at the Environment Agency. Well, I was invited by KPMG, who we've been working with for a couple of years now, redesigning our operating model for how the Environment Agency conducts its really important public safety services for England in terms of responding to environmental incidents like flooding and drought. I loved it. It was a real reminder for me, and I hope for my colleagues here across government, about why we're here and why we're doing these leadership roles, really reminding me about how the customer and the citizen should be at the heart of what we're doing. And for some parts of that, it was quite a moving experience as well, particularly when I'm thinking about vulnerable users of the services that we deliver. I think the temptation is that we work in our departments or agencies and with our teams and collaborating maybe more and more across government, we somehow sometimes lose the sight of what's important. And I think events like this have been really important to take us back into the doctor's waiting room or onto the delayed train, or with discussions with charity service providers who rely on government for data and services and policy and action and delivery, and really putting our partners and the public at the heart of what we do. I think particularly impactful was the fact that the testimony from the service users that we had during the intermissions were based on real data, real research. So the stories around the woman who lost her daughter and the difficulties and challenges that she had accessing services following that, accessing data from various parts of government, is real life. And I think that is a salient reminder that what we do and the decisions we make and the services that we deliver have an impact on the public every single day. There are so many notes that I made during the course of this evening. And in particular, I'm looking forward to going back to my team and thinking about making a start of transformation and the use of technology. At the moment, some of us are thinking actually the opportunities are too big or the problems are large and unsurmountable. They're not. We just need to make a start. So I'll be looking about where we can cut the anchor of some of the technology and services that are outdated safely at the right time. Also be looking to where we can access the latest of good practice from across government and from partners as KPMG and make a start. Try and think about what some of those lighthouse projects are so that we can gain the trust and confidence of government, of our staff, and most importantly of citizens, to give us that encouragement to go on and transform, to deliver the services that we know we want to.
My name is Simon Hunter. I'm the Director of the Child Maintenance Service within DWP. I thought tonight's event was incredibly powerful. Certainly the way it flowed and understanding the journeys in terms of a civil servant, a colleague, a customer, or customers, I should say, and everything that we were kind of seeing played out in front of us. They're pretty accurate in terms of what's happening. So it just brings home the work that needs to be done, the size and scale of the opportunity, but importantly, as senior leaders in the organisation, the responsibility that's on us to go and put these things right. I'll take a lot from tonight's event, but mainly, how important this stuff is and what we need to do and how we should be relentless in our pursuit of making that citizen experience better and improved as we go forward.
So, Jo, we've just heard from Kerry, Mary, Paul and Simon, 4 very different corners of the public sector. But I was struck by how much common ground there was in what they took away from the evening.
And I think, what struck me was the word start. Helen said it on the night, and she always does such a brilliant job of doing this. Kerry picked up on it, Paul echoed it, the sense that the scale of the challenge can feel paralysing, particularly at an ecosystem level. But actually the answer is just to begin and challenge yourself around what is the right decision I can make here. Pick something, try it, and learn from it.
And Paul's phrase really stayed with me, actually, cutting the anchor. I've not heard that before, but I think as a metaphor for legacy technology, or not just technology, but process and culture, that's really powerful. And that's what's holding a lot of organisations back.
Absolutely. And Mary's point about the 99% I thought was beautifully put. When a citizen interacts with a government service, that's 1% of their life. The other 99% is their health, their family, their finances, their anxieties, their jobs. It's all bearing down on that moment. And so often we design for the transaction rather than the person.
Yeah, exactly, which is why the format of the evening was designed to make you feel rather than just to try and understand intellectually.
Yeah, and I think that's what the actors were essentially using, real verbatims from our research. And with our attendees contributing to some of that debate, it really showed. People weren't just nodding along to slides. They actually felt something. And Paul described some of that as quite a moving experience. Simon talked about things being played out in front of them, feeling accurate in a way that brought home the responsibility they carry.
Yeah, and that idea of responsibility feels really important. These are senior leaders and they have the power to make the shift that your research is calling for. So the hope is that an evening like the one we've just been hearing about doesn't just inspire people, it converts into meaningful action.
Yeah, that's always the hope. We're so excited about how energised people felt at the end of the evening, so we'll be watching closely.
Well, that is unfortunately all we've got time for today. Make sure to add us to your podcast feed and do get in touch with any thoughts, experiences or questions that you'd like to share.
You can do that by dropping me or Jess a message on LinkedIn.
Or by emailing csw.editor@civilserviceworld.com.
Thanks for listening to It's Personal and see you next time.